I didn't hear my wife scream at first. What cut through the cold November air was the sound of her door being yanked open, metal on metal, hinges snapping under force, and then the thud of her body hitting the pavement. By the time her voice finally cracked through the chaos, I was already sprinting down the driveway barefoot, gravel biting into my feet, that instinctive ancient roar rising from somewhere deep behind my ribs. "Don't touch her!" I shouted, but the HOA had already surrounded her. Linda, our HOA president with that clipped, sugary voice and a smile that tightened whenever she looked at my wife, stood with her arms crossed as if she were presiding over a neighborhood bake sale instead of orchestrating an ambush. Her red coat glowed under the street lamp, a flag announcing who was in charge here, at least who she believed was in charge. "You cannot park in the blue curb zone," Linda said, her tone bright, cheerful, psychotic. "We've warned you." My wife, 7 months pregnant, lay on her side beside our SUV, clutching her belly, trying to breathe through the shock. One hand pressed against the asphalt, the other curved protectively around our daughter, who wasn't born yet. "We just pulled in," she whispered. "I wasn't even out of the car yet." One of Linda's board members, small, twitchy, wearing a reflective vest like she was official, recorded everything with her phone. Another stood by our mailbox, blocking the view from the road. A third positioned himself near the tailgate as if expecting backup. This wasn't a simple confrontation. They had staged this, prepared for this, looking for the moment when my pregnant wife could be turned into an infraction, an opportunity, a weapon. I dropped beside her, sliding an arm beneath her shoulders. "Are you hurt? Can you move? Are you—" "I'm okay," she said through trembling breath. "I'm okay. She pulled me." The trembling in her voice wasn't from fear. It was fury, embarrassment, disbelief. "You assaulted her," I said, rising slowly, turning to Linda. "All of you saw it." "No," Linda replied simply. "We saw her resisting compliance. We saw a violation. And we saw you," she pointed at me with 2 fingers, precise and arrogant, "approach us in a threatening manner. I suggest you step back." My chest tightened. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew exactly what she was doing. She was baiting me into a reaction, a single raised voice, a single step too close. One wrong move, and she'd twisted into something dangerous, something violent, something that would look terrible on camera. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst was the cold gleam in her eyes when she looked at my wife, the satisfaction of having her down on the ground, the hunger in it. "You should subscribe before I get to the rest," I said internally, half habit, half madness from the adrenaline crashing through me, but the real words that came out were quieter, darker. "Linda," I said, "you're making the biggest mistake of your life." "And you," she countered, "don't understand how this neighborhood works." Behind me, gravel shifted, someone running, not me, not the HOA, a neighbor, a witness. But Linda's board members stepped aside just long enough to let him see my wife on the pavement before blocking him out again. A warning: stay quiet. This was their show, their narrative, their trap. The lights from the street lamps buzzed overhead. My wife tried to sit up, wincing. I pulled her gently to her feet, keeping a hand on her back in case she swayed. "You're in violation," Linda repeated. "And now you've created an unsafe situation. We're documenting everything." "You assaulted a pregnant woman," I said. "That's the only thing documented here." She smirked, actually smirked at me. "Call whoever you think will come running. It won't matter." The way she said it, the confidence, the pride, chilled me more than the night air. She believed she had power. She believed she had already won. But she didn't know who my family was. She didn't know who we were connected to. She didn't know the one person who would cross county lines, blow past every siren, and arrive with the force of judgment itself the moment he heard what had happened. My brother, SWAT Captain Marcus Hale. I pulled my phone out slowly, deliberately, letting them record every second. Then I made the call. He answered on the first ring. "Marcus," I said, voice low. They heard her. There was no hesitation, no questions, just breathing and then steel. "Send location," he ordered. "I'm closest. I'll be there in 3. Linda watched me, head tilted, curious and entertained. "3 what?" she asked. But behind that false innocence sat a flicker of something else. Uncertainty. Fear even. Maybe she realized a line had been crossed. Maybe she sensed something gathering that she hadn't planned for. When I met her eyes, I didn't blink. 3 minutes. 3 minutes before the balance of power in this neighborhood changed forever. 3 minutes before Linda and her board learned the truth about the world outside their little HOA bubble. 3 minutes before the reckoning. I turned slightly toward my wife, keeping myself between her and the rest of them. "Help is coming," I whispered. Her hand tightened around mine, and with Linda's smile beginning to falter, her board shifting uneasily, the tension coiling so tight the air itself felt ready to snap, I exhaled once, steady. "Let me back up and tell you how this started. My name is Ethan Hale, and I've spent most of my adult life navigating danger. Years as a firefighter taught me how to read people, read chaos, and act when fear froze everyone else. I've run into burning buildings, crawled under collapsed roofs, and carried strangers out of places where they should have died. But nothing, not smoke, not fire, not the brutality of nature, prepared me for the slow, creeping violence of an HOA fueled by ego and entitlement. We bought the house at Lakeside Estates 2 years ago, the same week we learned we were expecting. The neighborhood was quiet, charming, wrapped around a private lake with docks stretching into calm water and houses trimmed with identical white fences. To us, it seemed safe, stable, a place where our child could grow without sirens in the background or neighbors screaming at each other through thin apartment walls. For my wife, it was more than a house. It was hope. She grew up moving every year, military kid, constantly uprooted, constantly adjusting. She wanted a home where our daughter would mark her height on the same doorway every birthday. A home with a porch where we could watch sunsets over the lake. A home with a nursery we painted together while she laughed because I couldn't draw a straight line to save my life. And for me, it was a promise to protect her, to protect them both. I had rotated off active rescue duty after a back injury, taking a state fire inspector role. Less chaos, more stability. But the instinct never left me. Every siren in the distance still pulled my attention. Every burst of noise made me ready to move. She teased me about it sometimes. "You can relax," she'd say, resting her head on my chest. "We're safe here." I wanted that to be true. I wanted to believe this neighborhood with its tree-lined streets and manicured lawns and glittering lake was exactly what it sold itself as. But the first sign we were wrong came the morning after we moved in. An envelope taped to our door. Not a welcome note. Not a neighbor greeting. A violation. The font was aggressive. The language ridiculous. Approach failure. Improper moving timing. Apparently, we had moved in at non-approved hours. There were no approved hours listed anywhere. I knocked on a few neighbors' doors. Most shrugged and said, "That's just Linda." I didn't know what that meant, not yet. But over the next few weeks, small things began to add up. A warning for leaving our trash bin out 20 minutes too long. A violation when my wife's mother parked on the street for more than 15 minutes. A picture of our mailbox with the door slightly ajar, emailed to us with the subject line, "Mailbox misconduct." If it had only been bureaucracy, I could have ignored it. But soon it wasn't. Soon it became personal. Linda stopped by unannounced whenever my wife was home alone. She insisted she needed visual inspections of our side yard. She stood too close, spoke too sweetly, asked questions she had no right asking. Then the comments began. "Oh, honey, maybe a neighborhood with strict rules isn't the best place for new mothers. Things can get overwhelming." Or, "You look pale today. Are you sure your husband is taking good care of you?" The worst was when she touched my wife's stomach without permission, just placed her hand there, fingers splayed, eyes bright. I wasn't home when it happened. My wife told me that night, quietly, curled up beside me, her voice shaking not from fear, but from something far deeper. Violation. I told her I'd handle it, but the next morning, instead of confronting Linda directly, I started paying attention. Patterns emerged. Linda didn't manage the HOA, she ruled it. Her inner circle followed her like disciples. Board meetings were closed-door affairs. Fines were issued selectively, mostly toward young families, veterans, single mothers, immigrant households, anyone she thought she could intimidate. And everyone warned me in hushed tones, "Don't challenge her. She'll make your life hell. She always wins." I don't intimidate easily. But for the first time in my life, the enemy wasn't fire or collapsing structures. It was someone smiling, someone with a clipboard, someone who looked harmless but had the subtlety of a knife sliding between ribs. Still, I tried to keep the peace, for my wife, for the baby, for the home we were building. Then, about 6 months into the pregnancy, something changed, not in us, in them. HOA board members started walking past our house more often, pausing at the end of our driveway, taking photos, recording videos. One of them even crouched near our fence, pretending to tie a shoe while angling their phone toward our backyard. I installed cameras. They complained the cameras violated aesthetics. I filed a formal request. They denied it. My wife's car was keyed. They claimed it was a coincidence. Someone left a note in our mailbox that simply said, "Move." We called the sheriff's non-emergency line, reported harassment. A deputy came out, but all he could do was write it up. "This HOA's known for being a handful," he said carefully. "Just keep records. Records, evidence, proof." That became my ritual every night. But still, I held back. Still, I tried to avoid making waves, because my wife would rest her hand on her stomach, eyes soft, and say, "Let's just get through the pregnancy. We'll figure everything else out later." She didn't want stress. She didn't want conflict. She wanted peace. Peace I could not seem to give her. And yet, I hadn't seen anything yet. Not compared to what they were planning. Not compared to the coordinated, deliberate cruelty that would nearly cost my family everything. Not compared to the night my brother, Captain Marcus Hale, tactical commander, decorated hero, would tear through this neighborhood like a judgment call delivered by the universe itself. But that devastation began much earlier, before that cold November night. It began with quiet footsteps and hesitant confession. It began with the neighbor who finally broke the silence. It began with our ally, and with the truth no one wanted to say out loud. Her name was Marissa Keller, and she lived 2 houses down, farmhouse-style porch, wind chimes that never seemed to stop, and a habit of noticing everything without ever appearing to watch. I first realized something was off about her when I caught her standing at the end of our driveway one evening, eyes locked on the maintenance shed across the cul-de-sac. Her arms were folded tight, and the corner of her mouth twitched like she was fighting the urge to speak. When she saw me, she flinched, tiny, quick, and pretended to be checking her phone. "Evening," I said. She nodded but didn't smile. Her gaze kept drifting back toward the shed, where 2 HOA board members were wheeling something large inside, talking low and fast. "You okay?" I asked. She swallowed, the movement rigid. "You didn't hear it from me." "Hear what?" She hesitated, glanced around, stepped closer. "Linda's escalating." My jaw tightened. "What does that mean?" "You're new," she murmured, "so you haven't seen what she does when she feels threatened." I thought of the cameras, the surveillance, the violations. "We've seen enough." "No," Marissa said quietly. "You haven't." A gust of wind rattled her chimes. It sounded like bones shaking. "Listen," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "You need to be careful, especially with your wife pregnant." My pulse thudded once, hard. "Did something happen?" Her breathing hitched, a soft, involuntary stutter, and she looked down at her shoes. Her fingers twisted the hem of her sleeve until the fabric stretched. "I saw her," Marissa said. "I saw Linda speaking to the board last week. They think you're defying them. They think you're trying to undermine authority. And Linda, she'll make an example out of anyone who challenges her." I focused on her face, darting eyes, tight jaw, throat bobbing. She wasn't lying. She wasn't exaggerating. She was scared. "Why tell me?" I asked. Her answer was immediate, heavy. "Because I've watched her do it before, and those people didn't deserve what she put them through. Do you have proof?" Her breath trembled. "Not yet, but I think she's planning something bigger this time, and I think it involves your family." I didn't respond right away, not because I doubted her, because I already knew. Deep down, I'd felt it too, the tension, the eyes, the strange way Linda's smile lingered on my wife like she was selecting prey. "What exactly did you overhear?" I pressed. Marissa shook her head. "Not enough, just the intent. And, Ethan, they're watching you. They're watching your wife." A crackle of cold crept up my spine. I wanted to dismiss it. I wanted to believe this was just a paranoid neighbor projecting fears. But Marissa was too careful, too measured, and the HOA board members who emerged from the shed carried a clipboard and a stack of pre-written violation forms. "Why come to me now?" I asked. She exhaled shakily. "Because today they asked me to join the board, and I refused. And that scared them?" "No," she whispered. "It scared me." A car door slammed somewhere behind us, and she startled visibly. Her hand twitched toward her pocket, thinking phone, escape route, defense, something. She wasn't just concerned, she was afraid of repercussions. "Look," she said, backing away. "Just be vigilant. Don't give them anything they can twist, and whatever you do, don't confront them alone." Her eyes lingered on the maintenance shed, then on the blue curb zone in front of our house, the same one that would later become the trigger of everything. "Why?" I asked. She swallowed. "Because they've already planned how they'll use it against you." I stepped closer. "You know more than you're telling me." She finally met my eyes. "I know that whatever Linda's planning next, it won't be subtle." Then she turned and hurried down the sidewalk, leaving me alone with the quiet hum of the street lamps and the steady, familiar ache in my gut that told me she wasn't warning me soon enough. My wife stepped outside a few minutes later, one hand on her belly. "Everything okay?" I forced myself to smile. "Yeah, just neighbor stuff." But she wasn't fooled. She never was. "You're tense," she said softly. "What happened?" I looked down at her, at the way she cupped her stomach instinctively, like her body already knew danger before her mind could. And I knew then, Marissa wasn't the start of something. She was the flare signaling what was coming. That night, I upgraded our cameras, reinforced the fence, installed lights over the driveway connected to silent alarms on my phone. My wife didn't argue. She watched me quietly, lying on the couch with a blanket draped over her growing belly, eyes following every step I took. "Ethan," she said finally, "are we safe here?" I sat beside her, taking her hand gently. "We will be. A promise. One I intended to keep. But promises are fragile things in a place built on control. Because while I fortified our home, Linda fortified her plan. And what came next was the beginning of the real pattern, the tightening rope, one loop at a time. It started the following morning with a note tucked under our wiper blade. Unauthorized vehicle position. Then a photo of my wife stepping out of her car, time-stamped 7:02 a.m., accompanied by exposure to road risk, safety infraction. Then footage, yes, actual edited footage, of me carrying groceries through our side gate, unregistered side entry. They weren't documenting life. They were manufacturing violations, setting a foundation, preparing a narrative. I reported everything. But without overt threats, there wasn't much the sheriff's office could do. Not until real harm occurred, and Linda knew it. She moved like someone who understood the limits of the law and danced just outside them. Her board moved with her, obedient. At grocery stores, neighbors whispered apologies to us. "I'm sorry," one older woman murmured, eyes down. "She's gone too far this time." "Then stop her," I said. She flinched. "We can't." Why? Because Linda had something on them? Because they feared fines? Because they feared humiliation? Or because they feared losing the fragile stability of their curated, perfect neighborhood? Fear comes in many shapes, but none of them justified what came next. A surveillance notice taped to our door. 5-day action review initiated, and beneath it, property subject to unannounced inspection. My wife stared at the paper, hand protecting her stomach. "Unannounced? They can't just come inside, right?" "No," I said, "not legally." "Ethan, why does it feel like they're trying to catch us doing something wrong?" Because they were. Because this wasn't about violations. It was about domination, control, submission. I pulled her close, but my eyes stayed fixed on our front window, where the reflection of the blue curb zone stretched across the street like a painted threat. The curb would become symbolic, weaponized, used against us. I should have known. I should have seen it earlier, but stress fogged judgment, and hope makes fools of even the most vigilant. For weeks, the HOA escalated the pattern, blocking our driveway with cones, leaving anonymous notes, hovering at the mailbox row whenever my wife checked our mail, standing on porches with clipboards whenever she took her daily walks. She began driving shorter routes, afraid to pass the board members stationed like sentinels along the sidewalks. She avoided the dock entirely, though though it had been her favorite place. The lake felt tainted now, its calm a mockery of the storm rising around us. And then, one quiet morning, she broke down. Not loudly, not dramatically, just tears sliding silently down her cheeks while she buttered toast. "This isn't normal," she whispered. "Why do they hate us?" I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tightly enough that she could feel how steady I was, even if I was unraveling inside. "They don't hate us," I murmured. "They hate losing control." "But what if they try something worse?" she asked. What if they try to hurt the baby?" Her voice cracked, her whole body trembled. That moment rewired something inside me. A man who has walked into fire knows the difference between heat and danger. And this was danger, real, immediate, coiled, ready. I didn't know yet what they were planning, but Marissa did. And before long, she would tell me just enough to piece together the truth. But by then, it would almost be too late, because the HOA wasn't just hostile now. They were preparing an attack, a coordinated one, the kind designed to provoke, designed to frame, designed to break families. And the first real sign of their intent would come not from a violation notice, but from the uneasy neighbor who knocked on our door one foggy morning, eyes wide, hands shaking, voice barely able to speak the words, "Ethan, I saw something you need to know about." And just like that, the real nightmare began. She was pale when I opened the door. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and her hands, usually steady, always busy with gardening tools or mason jar projects, shook like she'd been caught in the middle of a storm she wasn't prepared for. "Marissa," I stepped aside. "Come in." She didn't. She kept glancing over her shoulder toward the street, toward the mailbox row, where a blue curb ran like a border between safety and territory. Her throat worked as she swallowed hard. "I can't come inside," she whispered. "They'll see." They. The board. Linda. The tightening net around us. "What happened?" I asked. Her breath snagged, a tiny audible catch, and then she said the words that would shift everything. "I saw them in your backyard last night." My pulse darkened. "Who?" "The board, 2 of them, with flashlights, and something in their hands." Behind me, my wife hovered near the bottom of the stairs, one hand on her stomach, worry etched deep into her brow. "What were they doing?" I asked. Marissa dragged a trembling hand across her forehead. "Checking your fence line, taking measurements, taking pictures, and then one of them dropped something." "What?" She shook her head. "I couldn't see exactly, but it looked like a small bag. They left it by your hose reel." "Did they come through the gate?" I asked, voice low and cold. "No," she said. "They hopped the fence, both of them." My wife gasped softly behind me. Marissa heard it and closed her eyes, guilt or fear tightening her features. She leaned in closer until her breath ghosted against my ear. "They want to cite you for illegal materials storage," she whispered. "But I'm afraid, I think they want it to be something worse. A bag, planted, contraband, chemicals, something dangerous looking." Linda was escalating the narrative. They wanted to portray us as unstable, unsafe, unfit to live in their curated street of lakefront sanctity. And if they could manufacture danger, they could justify anything, even removal, even police involvement. And Linda didn't know my brother worked in law enforcement. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, her jaw tightened. "Because last night, I heard them talking." "Hear what exactly?" "That they needed one more infraction, something dramatic, something that involved your wife." My vision narrowed, my breathing went deep. Primal. "They said," Marissa continued, voice shaking harder, "she'll break, and when she does, we'll have everything we need." My wife covered her mouth, eyes wide with horror. "How do you know it was the board?" I asked, though I already believed her. "Could it have been someone else?" "It was them," she said without hesitation. "I recognize their voices. One of them is the treasurer, the other the safety officer. They wanted darkness, no cameras, no witnesses. But she had been one, a witness they didn't know about." I stepped out onto the porch with Marissa, lowering my voice. "Have you told anyone else?" "No," she said. "People don't speak about this. They don't want to get involved. They don't want Linda's attention on them." "But you came to me." She nodded, eyes glossy. "Because they picked the wrong person this time. I know what you do. I know what you're capable of. And I know you're not the type who lets his family get cornered." She was right. But I also wasn't the type to strike prematurely, not when the wrong move could give the HOA exactly the ammunition they wanted. "They're planning a setup," she said, "and they're going to try to trigger it soon." "How soon?" Her hesitation told me everything. "Days," she whispered. "Maybe hours." A cold wind pushed past us, rustling the porch flags. The lake carried a faint distant ripple, like a warning signal. "What do you need from me?" she asked, though her voice wavered. "Because whatever you decide, I'll help." Her internal conflict flickered across her face, fear tightening her eyes, loyalty pulling her forward again. She wanted to do the right thing, but knew the cost. Her breathing sped up in shallow bursts as she looked toward the maintenance shed. "They meet in there," she said, "at night, unofficial meetings, no minutes, no witnesses, just planning." That was where the unraveling would begin. "Marissa," I said, "anything you can document, any recording, any timestamps, save everything. Don't send it, don't share it yet, just keep it safe." She nodded. "I've already started." She hesitated before adding, "And Ethan, they're not just targeting your home." My jaw locked. "What do you mean?" "They're targeting you." A weight settled in the center of my chest. "But why?" my wife asked softly from the doorway. "We've never done anything to them." Marissa's expression softened with sympathy. "And something else, something like guilt." "Because you didn't bow," she said. "Because you didn't play submissive. Because Linda needs her power felt. And she doesn't tolerate households she can't intimidate." I took a slow, deep breath, letting the truth settle like ice. "Thank you," I told her. "You did the right thing." She nodded, but her eyes darted again to the curb, to the street lamp, to the shed. "Be careful. Please. I don't want to watch another family suffer because no one warned them." And then she slipped away, walking fast, shoulders tight, each step betraying the internal war between courage and fear. Inside, my wife stood, still, pale, fingers curling under her belly the way she did when she sensed stress building inside her body. "Ethan, what are we going to do?" I drew her into my arms. "We're going to stay calm," I said. "We're going to be smart, and we're not going to let them near you." But even then, even as I held her, even as I strengthened every lock and checked every camera angle that afternoon, I could feel something shifting in the air. The HOA wasn't simply harassing us. They were mobilizing. And the next 48 hours would confirm everything Marissa had warned us about. It began that night at the dock. Quiet water, dim moonlight, and voices carried across the lake. Voices I wasn't meant to hear. I had woken around 2 a.m., restless, sensing movement outside. I stepped onto the back porch, letting the cold bite my skin just enough to sharpen my focus. The maintenance shed door was cracked open. Board members slipped inside. 5 of them, Linda among them. My pulse settled into the slow, steady rhythm it always did when danger crystallized into clarity. I slipped on boots, pulled a jacket over my t-shirt, and moved silently along the fence line until I reached the shadowed path toward the lake. I stopped behind a cluster of trees, close enough to hear, but hidden enough to remain unknown. Linda's voice drifted out like poison. "He thinks he can watch us. He thinks he can threaten us. But wait until he sees what we've documented." A second voice, the treasurer, nasally and smug, said, "The wife is the key. She's emotional. Pregnant women snap easily." Laughter, actual laughter. I clenched my jaw so tight my teeth hurt. "We'll conduct the safety intervention tomorrow," Linda continued. "We'll block the driveway, force them to react, and when she panics, when she lashes out, they'll both be in violation," someone finished. "Danger to the community." "And then?" another asked. Linda's tone dropped. "Then law enforcement handles the rest." I went still. Cold, silent, law enforcement. They wanted us arrested, fired, publicly shamed. They wanted to ruin us. And they didn't know the man they were planning to provoke had a brother who led tactical entries for a living. A brother who didn't tolerate injustice. A brother who wouldn't wait for backup. The shed door thumped shut. Footsteps moved up the trail. I stayed in the shadows until every board member was gone and the night was still again. I returned home, heart pounding, mind working through layers of strategy, protection, potential confrontation, and what my brother would say when I told him. But I didn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. Morning came with an eerie electric stillness, and by afternoon, their plan had already begun to fold into place. Cones appeared around our driveway. Board members gathered near the blue curb with reflective vests and clipboards. Phones raised. My wife returned from a doctor's. Appointment alone, because they had timed it for when I wasn't with her. Their voices rose, their movements accelerated. They swarmed, pulled her from the car, triggered the trap. And the moment I saw her struggle to get up from the pavement, I knew Marissa had been right. They wanted a breaking point. They wanted a spectacle. They wanted a family destroyed. But what they got instead was a Hale reacting under pressure, a firefighter trained to stay calm under fire, a brother whose emergency call summoned someone far more dangerous than any HOA president. Because when they hurt my wife, when they laid hands on her, when they tried to twist the narrative for the last time, my brother arrived first, and the storm they had prepared for us became their own. My phone buzzed with a text before I even reached the end of our driveway. Marcus, 2 minutes out. Don't engage. Keep her safe. I didn't need the reminder, but seeing his words steadied something inside me. I positioned myself between my wife and the HOA crowd. One hand braced against her back, the pulse in my forearm ticking like a detonator. Linda took a single step forward, arms folded, chin lifted with a smugness that made something ancient coil at the base of my spine. "I hope," she said, voice theatrical and loud enough for every recording phone to catch, "that you understand your behavior is being documented. This situation is entirely your doing." My wife's fingers tightened around my arm. She tried to stand straighter, tried not to show pain, even though I could feel the tremor through her muscles. I kept my voice level. "Stay where you are, Linda." Her eyes gleamed. "Or what? You'll escalate further?" She wanted the moment to blow up. She wanted the narrative to spin in her direction. But I didn't rise to the bait. Years of responding to emergencies had honed my patience, sharpened my instincts. But the board members behind her, sweaty, jittery, phones raised like weapons, were already on edge. A man in a vest stepped closer. "You parked in a restricted area." "It's my driveway," I said. "It's a blue zone adjacency," he argued. "That's not a thing." "It is today," Linda snapped, not breaking eye contact. "And your wife became aggressive when asked to comply." My wife gasped. "That's a lie." I squeezed her hand gently. "Don't talk to them." Linda's veneer cracked just a little. Irritation cut across her features. She had wanted my wife emotional, loud, reactive. Instead, we were calm, and she hated calm. A rumble in the distance broke the tension. Not thunder, not traffic. A familiar engine growl, fast, purposeful. Too loud for a regular patrol car. Linda's eyes flicked toward the sound, confusion pinching her eyebrows. Then the flash of emergency lights reflected off the row of mailboxes. The HOA members stiffened, phones dipped, uncertainty spread like infection. A black tactical SUV swept around the curb and screeched to a hard stop, angled, authoritative, blocking the HOA crowd from backing away. The passenger door flew open, and my brother stepped out. Captain Marcus Hale, broad-shouldered, jaw like carved granite, bulletproof vest still strapped across his chest, badge gleaming, expression colder than the winter air. He wasn't just a cop, he was command. He scanned the scene once, wife, pregnant, shaken, HOA crowd too close, phones recording, me braced for a fight, and I watched his posture shift into tactical readiness. "Everyone take a step back," he ordered. It wasn't a request, it was command tone, sharp, controlled, the kind that made suspects freeze and rookies straighten. But Linda didn't freeze. She stepped forward like she belonged in charge. "Excuse me," she chirped. "This is private HOA business. We don't need police involvement." Marcus didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her existence. His eyes were locked on my wife, assessing, evaluating, checking for injury. When he finally did stare at Linda, it was slow, deliberate, and blisteringly cold. "Ma'am," he said, voice flat, "I just watched footage of your group pulling a pregnant woman out of her vehicle." Linda's mask slipped. "Footage?" she echoed too quickly. Marcus's smile, or what passed for it, was lethal. Yes, he said. Footage. He held up his phone. Marissa. She'd sent it to him. The entire thing. From an angle the HOA didn't know existed. From the porch across the street. Linda sputtered. You can't accept unauthorized recordings. Oh, I can accept evidence, Marcus cut in. I can also accept witness testimony. And based on what I'm seeing here, we may be dealing with harassment, physical assault, illegal detainment, and a coordinated attempt to provoke violence. Silence fell. Real silence. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. One of the board members, a smaller man with shaking hands, lowered his phone. We were conducting a safety inspection. Marcus wheeled on him. You entered their driveway without permission? That zone isn't their property, the man insisted. Marcus pointed at the curb. That blue stripe is not a legally recognized boundary. It's decorative. You assaulted a civilian based on paint. My wife let out a small, trembling breath. Linda's throat bobbed. Captain Hale, we have authority here. No, Marcus said. You absolutely do not. The treasurer piped up, voice cracking. We asked her to step out of the car. Marcus stepped toward him, towering, voice dropping into something dark. You laid hands on a pregnant woman. The man's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Linda forced a smile, bright, desperate. There must be a misunderstanding. There is, Marcus interrupted. Your misunderstanding of the law. Then he turned to me. You good? He asked, quietly. Yeah, I said. Now. My wife gave a small nod, tears gathering but not falling, her strength holding, her dignity shining even in her fear. Linda attempted one last swing. This is overreach. You have no jurisdiction during HOA proceedings? Marcus blinked once. That was all. Then he stepped closer, invading her space just enough that she had to tilt her head up to meet his eyes. Listen very carefully, he said, voice low and lethal. HOA authority ends where criminal behavior begins. He held up his phone again. And I have criminal behavior. Linda paled. The board began to shift, exchanging glances, cracks appearing in their unity. We're going to stand here, Marcus said calmly, and you're going to stay exactly where you are until the deputies I called arrive. They're bringing a warrant for evidence seizure. You can't seize HOA property, Linda shrieked. Marcus smirked. Watch me. At that precise moment, a wave of panic rolled through the board members. One stepped back too quickly, another cursed. A third tried to hide their phone behind them. Marcus saw everything. Everyone keep your hands where I can see them, he commanded. The board didn't comply as a group, but individually, defeated, they did. Linda's lips trembled. You're making a mistake. No, Marcus said. You made the mistake. You thought you could terrorize a pregnant woman and weaponize bureaucracy. Now you're about to learn the difference between HOA authority and the state criminal code. It was the most satisfying sentence I had ever heard. But it wasn't the end. Not even close. Because as the deputies arrived, 3 cruisers sliding into the cul-de-sac, the neighborhood began to emerge. Porch doors opened, lights flicked on, neighbors gathered, whispering. The truth was finally visible. The facade was broken. The reign of fear was collapsing. And Linda? For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid, not of us, but of what came next, the arrests, the exposure, the consequences she had never imagined would touch her. And they were coming fast. Deputies streamed out of their cruisers with a level of urgency that told the entire neighborhood something serious had detonated in Lakeside Estates. Radios crackled, flashlights sliced through the settling dusk. The first deputy, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head, made a direct line for Marcus. Captain Hale, he said, we got your call. Multiple charges possible. You want point or you want me to run it? You run it, Marcus said. I'm witness and complainant's family. That line sent shockwaves through the HOA board. Linda's eyes widened. You're compromised, she snapped. You can't be involved, Marcus looked at her like she was a smudge he intended to wipe from a surface. I'm the one who confirmed the assault, he said, and I'm the one who secured the witness. Footage. That doesn't compromise me. That protects procedure. My wife squeezed my hand, grounding herself. She trembled, but she held her head high. She was brave, braver than she realized, and I felt that same internal vow I'd made 100 times tighten like steel. She would not be touched again. Not by them. Not by anyone. The lead deputy turned to the board members. Phones on the ground, face down, step away. 3 complied immediately, panic overtaking whatever loyalty they felt toward Linda. 2 hesitated. Linda didn't move at all. "This is harassment," she insisted, voice rising. "We're a functioning homeowners association. You're an unlicensed governing body," the deputy said, cutting her off. "And based on the footage we've received, you committed a criminal act." "What footage?" she demanded, and right on cue, Marissa stepped out of her doorway. She walked slowly, but with a spine straightened by resolve. Her eyes glistened under porch light reflections, her hands still shaky, but not withdrawing this time, not hiding. She approached the deputies silently, holding out her phone. "I recorded everything," she said. A few neighbors gasped. One man murmured, "Finally!" Linda spun toward her, face twisting. "Marissa, you traitor!" "Don't," the deputy warned. "One more step toward her, and you'll be restrained." The treasurer, a wiry man with a comb-over, burst into sweating panic. "I didn't touch anybody," he stammered. "I was just documenting. I didn't even want to come." Linda's eyes turned on him like daggers. "So that's it?" she hissed. "You're all cowards now?" The board looked around, shrinking under the humiliation of neighbors watching. Their facade was collapsing, their solidarity fracturing. One woman stepped aside, trembling. I didn't know she was pregnant. Linda just said, she said that she'd break," Marcus supplied flatly. "Yes, we heard the shed audio. You planned this." Another collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. I stared at my brother. He nodded once. "I accessed exterior cameras from the maintenance shed before coming here," he said quietly. "Caught part of the conversation. Not everything, but enough." The deputy's eyes hardened. "Then this is a conspiracy." Linda's jaw dropped. "You can't use that. That's HOA property." "It's evidence," Marcus said. A deputy stepped toward Linda. "Ma'am, turn around, hands behind your back." "Wait, what are you?" "You are being detained for questioning in connection with assault, attempted fraudulent reporting, harassment, and possible trespassing." "No!" she shrieked, voice cracking. "You can't arrest me. This is my neighborhood." "You don't own the law," the deputy said, "and you don't own these people." The moment Linda's wrists clicked into cuffs, something shifted, like pressure lifting off the entire cul-de-sac. A storm breaking. A woman from across the street stepped outside, wrapped in a robe. "Thank God," she whispered. A man on his porch nodded slowly, relief softening the tension in his shoulders. "It's about time." One of the board members, the small, shaky man, broke down entirely. "I didn't want to be part of this," he cried. "Linda said she'd find me until I moved out. She said she'd ruin me." The deputy guiding him toward a cruiser said, "Then today you stop letting her." Phones continued dropping into evidence bags. Deputies took statements. Flashlights illuminated the blue curb, the driveway, the skid marks on the pavement where my wife had been wrenched out of the car. Every detail mattered now. Every second would be dissected later in court. Marcus moved closer, holding my wife's gaze with quiet power. "You okay to answer a few questions?" he asked her gently. She nodded. Yes, I can." He led her toward the deputy taking statements, but not before leaning toward me. "You good to stay calm?" he asked under his breath. "I'm past calm," I muttered, "but I'm steady." He gave a short nod. "Good, because this isn't just tonight. This is going all the way up." And he was right. This wasn't over with a few cuffs and cruisers. This was the unraveling of a regime, the fall of an abusive structure. A system that had hidden behind fines and bylaws and intimidation for years was finally being seen for what it was, a machine designed to break people. And tonight, the machine malfunctioned. Neighbors emerged further, gathering in clusters, whispering, piecing together the fragments of truth they had suppressed out of fear. One woman approached my wife. "I saw them," she said tremulously. "I didn't know what to do. I'm so sorry." My wife smiled softly, tears forming, compassion overcoming hurt. "Thank you for saying something now." Another neighbor, an older man with a cane, added, We all kept quiet too long." The deputies escorted Linda toward a cruiser, but she twisted in their hold. "You haven't seen the last of this," she screamed. "You think this will stand? My lawyers will shred every one of you. I'll sue this whole street." Marcus didn't respond to her. He didn't even look at her. He simply stood there, solid as stone, a reminder that power built on intimidation has a short lifespan. The door slammed shut on Linda's screaming. My wife leaned into me, exhaustion finally hitting her. Marcus turned back, eyes checking her posture, her breathing. "She's okay," I said quietly. He nodded. "Good, because tomorrow it gets technical." "Tomorrow?" I asked. "County wants full statements. HOA financial audit will start. Emergency injunction hearings. Court will be fast because of the physical assault." I exhaled sharply. "And the board?" Marcus stared at the cruiser where Linda sat fuming behind glass. "Most of them will flip. They always do. But Linda? She's going to burn." Relief tried to settle in, but adrenaline hadn't left my body yet. Not even close. Because justice wasn't complete. The public fallout hadn't begun. Court hadn't dismantled her authority. And I wasn't done protecting my family. Not until everything she built turned to ash. By the next morning, Lakeside Estates no longer felt like the place we'd moved into. The neighborhood was too quiet, unnaturally quiet, like everyone was waiting for permission to breathe again. Patrol cars still lingered near the entrance gates. Yellow evidence markers dotted our driveway, where deputies had collected soil samples, scuff marks, and even fibers from my wife's torn sweater. The HOA bulletin board near the mailbox row, once filled with announcements about landscaping rules and lake hours, now had a single sheet of paper taped to it. Notice of board suspension. County intervention enacted. And beneath it, in bold, all HOA operations, temporarily halted pending investigation. For the first time since moving here, the board wasn't watching us. They were hiding. My wife sat at the kitchen table with a cup of ginger tea, one hand resting protectively on her belly. The tension in her shoulders hadn't eased yet, but she was breathing normally again, and that alone was enough to ground me. She looked up when I entered. "Are they really doing it? Taking over the HOA?" "They're not just taking it over," I said. "They're dismantling it." I told her about Marcus's call earlier that morning, how the county had issued an emergency injunction against Linda and her officers, how financial audits were already underway, how the illegal board meetings, the planted evidence, the surveillance, the forged violation notices, and the physical assault had created a perfect storm of criminal exposure. "They're charging her with 4 counts minimum," I said. "Possibly more once digital forensics are done." My wife's hand shook faintly. "I still can't believe she grabbed me like that." "You don't have to believe it," I said softly. "She's going to answer for it." Before she could respond, a soft knock tapped against our window. Not the door, the window. I crossed the living room, parting the blinds just enough to see outside. Marissa stood on our porch with a thick folder clutched in her arms. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back messily, but determined. I opened the door. "Everything okay?" She shook her head. "No, not yet, but we're getting there." She handed me the folder. "What's this?" I asked. "Everything," she said. "Meeting notes, screenshots, emails Linda sent to board members, copies of fines she issued without proper votes, voice memos she recorded during private conversations." My chest tightened. "Marissa, this is enough. To bury her." "That's the point," she said. My wife joined us at the doorway. "Why did you have all this?" Marissa's micro-expressions flickered, guilt, fear, then resignation. "Because she tried to recruit me. She thought grooming me into her circle would make me loyal. But instead, I saw the rot up close." She rubbed her thumb along the seam of her sleeve, nervous energy crackling beneath her voice. "I should have come forward sooner," she whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't. She threatened my job, my mortgage, everything. But last night, seeing her drag your wife like that, I couldn't stay quiet anymore." My wife reached forward and squeezed her arm gently. "You did the right thing." Marissa nodded, tears gathering, but not falling. She glanced toward the maintenance shed across the street, where yellow tape now fluttered in the cold wind. "There's more," she said. My stomach tightened. "Go on." "I heard what they were planning next." I stiffened. After the stage confrontation? Yes, she said. They wanted to file a restraining order against you, claim you were violent, that your wife was emotional and unstable. They wanted you both removed for community safety. My wife covered her mouth, horrified. They were going to push for emergency relocation, Marissa continued, her voice trembling. They wanted to force you out of the neighborhood entirely. I felt heat rise through my chest, slow, dangerous, controlled. Not anymore. No, she agreed, not anymore. Before she left, she handed me one last item, an audio file on a flash drive. This one, she whispered, is the worst. I waited until she walked back to her house before bringing it inside. My wife sat beside me, close but steady, and I plugged the drive into my laptop. A crackle, footsteps, then Linda's voice, smooth and venomous. If we trigger her, she'll panic. Pregnant women are unpredictable. She'll yell, she'll cry, and we'll get everything on camera. Once she snaps, we call law enforcement and show them she's a danger to the community. Another voice asked, "What about the husband?" Linda laughed. "He's even easier. Men like that always break. You just have to corner them." My wife's hand flew to her chest. I closed the laptop slowly, methodically, because the anger inside me wasn't the reckless kind. It was the measured kind. The kind that turned firefighters into commanders, protectors into avengers. Later that afternoon, the deputies returned to collect the new evidence. One of them, a young man with a sympathetic expression, told us, "The DA is fast-tracking this. You'll probably get subpoenas by tomorrow. She's not getting out of this with fines or probation." Good, because this wasn't just about an HOA president drunk on power. This was about every moment of fear my wife lived through. Every night she lay awake listening for footsteps. Every time she hesitated to go outside, because Linda stood at the mailbox row, watching like a hawk hungry for weakness. This was about justice, and justice was finally coming. The next day, the courtroom smelled like old books and new anger. The benches were filled with neighbors, some there out of guilt, some out of curiosity, many out of relief. Linda stood at the defense table in a blazer a shade too bright, lips pinched, eyes darting as if looking for an escape route. When the judge took the bench, silence swallowed the room. Marcus sat behind us. Marissa sat to our left. My wife held my hand tightly, her thumb brushing the back of mine with small, steady strokes. The judge reviewed the evidence in pieces, video of the assault, audio from the shed, emails plotting stage violations, testimony from multiple neighbors, and the flash drive recording that made the entire room go still. When it finished playing, the judge leaned forward. "Ms. Reynolds?" Linda stiffened at her name. "This is not governance. This is not community management. This is targeted harassment, conspiracy, and abuse of authority." Linda tried to speak. "Your Honor, I was enforcing regulations." "No," the judge said sharply. "You were enforcing your ego." A few neighbors inhaled sharply. My wife squeezed my hand tighter. The judge continued. "It is the ruling of this court that you are removed from all HOA positions, barred from serving on any board for a minimum of 10 years, referred for criminal prosecution, and subject to civil liability for damages." Linda's mouth fell open. "No," she whispered. "No, no, you can't. This community needs me. This community needs safety," the judge replied. "And you made it unsafe." He signed the order with a finality that felt like a string snapping. The HOA board members behind her slumped in their seats. A man in the second row muttered, "Finally." The judge wasn't finished. "As for the HOA itself," he said, "it will be placed under temporary state supervision and audited. If the audit reveals additional misconduct, the association may face dissolution." A murmur swept through the courtroom, then silence again, the kind that marks the end of something dark. When the gavel fell, it sounded like thunder. Outside the courthouse, neighbors approached us one by one. Some apologized. Some thanked my wife for her strength. Some hugged Marissa. Marcus stood near the steps, arms crossed, watching everything with proud eyes. When my wife and I finally reached him, he smiled faintly. "Hell of a fight you won here," he said. "We didn't win it," I said. "We survived it." He clapped a hand on my shoulder. "That's a win too." My wife exhaled deeply, her breath fogging the cold air. "Can we go home now?" she asked. "Yeah," I said softly. "We can go home." Lakeside Estates looked different when we pulled in that evening. Not physically, but spiritually. The tension that once hung over the driveways, the docks, the fences, the mailbox row was gone. People smiled, waved, spoke freely. For the first time, our home felt like home. Later that night, after dinner, after the adrenaline finally faded, we walked down to the dock together. The water was still, reflecting the moon like a silver coin. My wife leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. "She moved," she whispered, taking my hand and placing it on her stomach. I felt our daughter kick, strong, sure, alive. "Feels like she knows," I murmured. "She does," my wife said. "She feels safe again." We stood there a long time, listening to nothing but the water and the promise of a quieter future. Finally, I whispered, "We're going to raise her somewhere she never has to fear the people next door." My wife nodded. "And we're never letting anyone like Linda near our family again." The porch lights across the lake glowed softly, and the world, after so much chaos, felt calm again. I held my wife close, our daughter pressing against my hand, and let the night settle around us. The storm had passed, justice had come, and for the first time since moving in, we were free. If you want more stories of justice, family, and high-stakes neighborhood battles, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next one.